Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod. We have Waseem Alzaher with us. He's CEO at Cannabis Clinic and Greenleaf Group, cool company with an S. He's in New Zealand. I'm in Oaxaca, Mexico. We'll talk about cannabis and how he's growing his empire slowly but surely right now since 2019. We're going to have a fun time today. This pod is presented by podpire.com. If you want to start or scale a podcast, go to podpire.com. Waseem, glad to have you on. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice to meet you, Charles. And yeah, look, we run Greenleaf Group. We're New Zealand's leading medicinal cannabis provider here in New Zealand. So we prescribe and send cannabis all throughout the country. It's much like what's happening overseas, basically, but in New Zealand, we've got a very much a medical model of medicinal cannabis. And yeah, so we do a lot of work with a lot of doctors, nurses, admin, marketing, technology teams. We really are looking at really setting a new benchmark of how we deliver healthcare in terms of the level, the quality of healthcare and how we deliver it. Something that puts the benchmark, a lot higher than what you would expect. Because here in New Zealand, healthcare is primarily a public service, so it's funded by the government, and that's good for people because obviously it's free of cost, but it also comes with challenges whenever government is running things. There's conflicts. There's conflict in between the whole government and private sector. So we sit somewhere in the middle, and yeah, that's a little bit about what we do in every day.
Very cool. And what's your background? Because you studied surgery, I believe, neuroscience as well. So what pushed you towards the cannabis industry?
Yeah, I did a medical degree and I did a Bachelor of Science and special majoring in neuroscience before that. And yeah, what pushed me into this really, I was always interested in like alternative healthcare and alternative ways of going about things. But really, what pushed me into it is just watching how like the understanding of what healthcare is all about. Like doctors, and I think I can say this as a generalization worldwide, we're very good at thinking in a very particular way. And so you kind of get the same, approach every time. And that's what medical school is all about. But what really got me into it was just thinking, well, how do we take the service to the next level up? How do we make this a really client focused, patient focused service, as opposed to one where the doctor knows best, and that's it. It's a one way highway, and you take what you're given basically. And the law in New Zealand around medicinal cannabis changed, and I was trying to figure out how best to contribute in my own ways to furthering and empower, and really revolutionizing healthcare. That's what we're all about. We're all about revolutionizing the healthcare experience. And medicinal cannabis, there's a lot of demand for it. A lot of people are asking for it, and it was a natural fit. So I kind of fell into it, and then the rest is history from there on. And it's been an amazing, eye-opening experience, to be honest. Just seeing the number of people we've helped along the way and whose lives have been changed has just been phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, I've been a cannabis user from my very young age, as early as 16, most probably as most teens in my native Quebec. And later in my journey as a biohacker, discovered the benefits of CBD most importantly to hack my body, calm my nerves down, and reduce pain as an athlete and so forth. But has a lot more to give, CBD and possibly even THC. So in Canada, they legalized cannabis a couple of years ago. Do you think New Zealand, as a more libertarian, um, yeah, ex Westminster colony, do you think they're gonna follow Canada's example and legalize the whole thing, or it's a longer journey?
I think it will over time. I think New Zealand is a fairly conservative country in many ways. It takes a long time, for things to trickle down. We're also very isolated. We're quite physically isolated as well from the rest of the world. So it will happen. I think it will happen over time. The question is just a matter of when. Because I don't know if you're aware, we actually had a referendum in 2020 to looking at legalizing recreational cannabis. So apart from the medical side, just the whole dispensary model, and it was a very close vote. It was somewhere around 40, 49-51 or 48-52% voted with the vote. So it almost got through, but didn't quite. And yeah, I think also people got confused because New Zealand had also just put the medical side up and running, so people didn't really understand really the difference between the two models, and so it got caught in the two of them. But yeah, it will happen over time for sure. But it's like a totally different world because I think once you see other countries and what they're doing, and it kind of opens up your mind and it opens up your perspective, and it puts things in perspective. And we find that actually some of our doctors that work for us, they do it because they've spent time overseas, they've seen what it's like, in Canada and other places, and then they come back and say, actually, I want to do this and within my own profession, because even for doctors, it's hard for them to get their heads around cannabis. If all they do is what they're trained and what they're used to doing, then it's hard for them to have that mental shift.
Right. The 420 community must have been really disappointed at this referendum. Um, why do you think people are still opposed to that if alcohol is like statistically causing that much more damage?
I think it's judgment and an emotional reaction, right? Like people would think of, I don't know, if you asked your parents, would they support it? They probably, the first thing that comes to their mind is, what would my son or daughter do if it was, there was no restrictions? They'd imagine yourself or me, thinking, yay, it's legalized, and then you grab a joint and smoke it. So that's probably what influences people. And yeah, like, it'll be nice to think that people are objective about it, but the answer is people are not objective about things. There's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of judgment, and then people just carry that forward, whether they consciously recognize it or they don't. I think it's just something in society, and yeah, like, even for me personally, like, because I come from a Middle Eastern background, right? I was raised in New Zealand since I was young, so I've known New Zealand for most of my life, but originally from the Middle East. And even for my own parents, like, I couldn't put my hand on heart and say that they're proud of what I do. Not at all. They'd much rather see me, back into what they would call a proper job or normal doctor work, even though I don't consult anymore, and I haven't for the past couple of years. But that's the kind of the judgment that people carry when it comes to issues like this. And yeah, it's interesting. But that's why we exist, is just to challenge that. And just like those misconceptions and that kind of understanding exists around cannabis, it also exists around healthcare. Like that whole healthcare experience, when people go to their doctor and talk to their doctor, and what the aftercare is like, what the experience is like. That whole thing is, again, it's also an understanding. It's a mindset. It's a judgment that we hold, and yeah, we exist to question all that and redefine it.
Might be sometimes, the psychoticism related to weed and its very fast acting effect, because yeah, I asked myself if my parents, right? Well, I was stoner from like the age of 15 to like 19, right? So I guess I brought it to them and they realized I was functional, but indeed they had all these misbelief, they think that one under weed is like, ooh, like yeah, well, they would happily get drunk sometimes, and in my eyes, they were the one that were making no sense, So, but nowadays, I mean, it's legal in Canada. So, talking about a perception change, oh, now weed is all peace and love, it's all accepted by society because people see that it's like live and let live, right? Like people can stone all they want, they can smoke cigarettes if they want to as well. They can do whatever they want. So
Mhm.
me, the angle at which I'm looking at it from a societal perspective is people that do not have access to prescriptions necessarily or don't want to go through the hassle of getting a prescription, but indeed suffer from, I don't know, chronic diseases, or they might need this little spice in their life, you know? Now, the other side of that is people that get addicted to it, quote unquote. I mean, scientifically, you can't not get it addicted to weed like you can with other stuff, but it just becomes a part of their life, you know, habit, just like drinking orange juice. I mean, there's vitamin C in orange juice, but there's also a lot of sugar. And drinking
Mm,
it real quick might be bad for me. And now I might have an orange juice habit. So, and in
mm,
weed, it's a bit more dramatic than that, and it tends to burn some of your neuron if you do it frequently. So there's all these pros and cons. But last but not least, and I want your opinion on all of that, as a government, you can make very nice money of that. I think that's a well put argument. You can reinvest it in other places of society and health, and you can let people do what they want to. And even if you're not intervening, these people will still smoke joints illegally. Um,
mm,
that's what we all do. And last but not least, like me, a point that's important to me because I'm in Mexico here and there's the narco wars, is cocaine, for example. I also think these drugs should be legal because they're causing great mishaps, and obviously having it managed by, you know, like mercenaries isn't the way to go. So, what's your take on that rainbow arco iris of opinions here?
mm. In terms of like the other drugs in and legalization or decriminalization.
In terms of the effect of that it can have on one's brain, in terms of the potential money that a government can make, in terms of the drug being able to help people in their lives, and in terms of legalizing other harder drugs.
Mm. Yeah, there's definitely a money element for government for sure. I think that is a definitely an important part of it, but there's also politics and like the perceived position of government and what they do to gain votes basically. So I think it's a bit of a balance. If they're not making money through the through the economy of cannabis or whatever drug that they decide to legalize, then it's going to be through taxes or in some other way to recoup that. So you can be assured that they're not going to miss out on the economic benefits in some way or form. And I think that's what happened in New Zealand, to be honest, because the government, because the referendum didn't go through, it's going to be very tricky for the government to just impose like the legalization, and then plus we lost the Labor government. We've got another government in the national government at the moment, and they take on a more conservative approach. So it's probably not happening anytime too soon. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on what side of the fence you sit on. But yeah, look, in terms of the other drugs, I'm actually not 100% sure because I feel like it's a public health question in terms of what's going to be more safer for people. But at the end of the day, what people have to recognize is the power of free will and people's choice of doing things. Like if you really want to do something, you'll find a way to make it happen, whether it's legal or illegal. And do you really want to have people doing things illegally and stigmatize it rather than empower them to make the right decision for themselves? And if they decide to make the wrong decision, aka use certain products that are harmful or overuse or do all that, then it's kind of like it's up to them. It's people's choice, right? But I think that whenever it's that irony of what you ban or what you say no to becomes a lot more desirable. It's kind of like kids. I've got two boys, right? They are 7 and 9 years old, and they're very active, and they play and they fight with each other or what have you. But it's funny because the moment you tell them the rule is no swearing at home, right? Not allowed to swear, and then the only thing they want to do is swear, and then they like, they whisper to each other and laugh, and then they do all that because it's not allowed. Whereas I feel like if you just do it and normalize it, then it won't be such a special thing, or
But
if
that's
you
human nature. It's like pushing the boundaries. How far can I go? Right. And that generates adrenaline in itself, which is very addictive too.
totally, yeah, totally. It's the human nature to kind of push on those boundaries. So I guess, so I guess you got to push on the right boundaries when you are in business or in healthcare, is to know where to push because you've got to push boundaries. Like I think life is boring if you don't push boundaries. You just go along with the flow and do what everyone else is doing and not stand up for anything. I think that's boring. So you've got to push boundaries and you've just got to push the right ones. And um, yeah, I think there's something to be said there for government and policies and how we do things in terms of what we allow and don't allow.
When I think of society and how it could manage, I can't help myself but think of a Neuralink in which we would all be connected um, through a chip in the brain. And if I kill one of your family members, I would feel you and all your family suffering for years and years and years. So I would never do such a thing, or I could pre live doing that, how it would feel to hurt someone. And because of that, that would give me like immediate empathy. Plus, it would give me an immediate connection to all of my actions. So, and that's how decisions would be taken in this society. That's how people would live. We would live more peacefully, right? We wouldn't try to conquer one another because we would see the hurt of taking what's somebody's property or belongings. And I think ultimately that's how decisions would be made at the societal level. What do you think about that sci-fi?
That's interesting. That's interesting. I'd be keen to hear more about why you think that because I think that I don't know if that will necessarily happen in terms of the outcome that you're after. And I understand the outcome that you're after, which is positive behavior. But I think there's a lot of people do things that don't make sense, and they know that doesn't make sense, but they still do them regardless. It's kind of like people who are addicted to alcohol or addicted to anything for that matter of fact. Like it's really hard to break the cycle. Like you drink and you'd feel the consequences and you know you're wasting so much time and you so much of your potential is going, but then you're still drinking again and again and again and it still keeps going and going. And I think the reason for that is because people feel shame of being a really, really bad person for doing something, and therefore they find something to try and numb it out, to try
Negative
and escape
cycle.
it,
Yeah.
and it becomes a cycle. And I think the key is for people in general to actually appreciate that um, that we all have goodness in our heart and we're all good people at heart, but we all make bad choices sometimes, and it's really important to recognize that a mistake is a mistake, but a mistake is not does not make someone a horrible, bad, or evil person, if you know what I mean. And I think that differentiation is will help people break cycles and bad behavior, which we see a lot of in medicine because, healthcare, like so much of it is lifestyle based, there's decisions and what have you. It's nowhere near as some of the, like killing someone, obviously, that's a much more severe um, bad decision to
Yeah,
make.
or drunk driver, right? It's like that they're just oblivious. They're totally disconnected. But indeed, there's like this strata of society which I'm not familiar with in my own little island. And yeah, it's hard for me to have empathy for that. And that's where the Neuralink would come again. And I could live these people's reality and understand them at their core. And they could also understand my world and see that there's potential out there, and you can literally go from zero to one. Um, I'm curious
Who's the
though, in
community you refer to, Charles? What is it?
the who?
Did you say something about a specific community living on your island you mentioned?
No, like island, it was proverbial, because if I would live on an island, would be Entrepreneur Island. I'm in Mexico right now, but
Yes.
I live on my island, like I am very single minded. I would qualify myself as a founder. That's what I identify myself with. Then a biohacker, then an athlete, and I'm very conscious that there's not everyone's like that. I spoke with so many folks, but me understanding the reality of someone that's constantly drinking. I mean, I've listened to two books about a personal biography of someone that was stuck in addiction, one of which was Matthew Perry, the friend's actor that died from his alcohol addiction, and I could understand some aspect of it, right? Because we're all prone to addiction, whether it's food, whether it's sex, whether it's orange juice. Um, we're all like we're creatures of habits, right? And we're
Mm,
creatures of pain as well. We're all in pain, most of us. So yeah, my point was that I have problems empathizing with this thread of society, the
mm,
people stuck in addiction and stuck in the proverbial Batman hole, the Batman prison. They cannot get out of it. They constantly struggle, sometimes a full lifetime, to get out of that. Like you with your patients at the clinic, do you feel that some of them are coming for physical pain, but some others it's like mental part of it, like maybe depression? Like, why do people come to your clinic?
yeah, totally both. It's pain, it's anxiety and mental health, and it's sleeping problems. And a lot of them are intertwined within each other. And really, all three are essential to have good physical health and, have the body in balance and have good physical health. So that's a combination of reasons that they come to see us. But I hear you. I hear you. I think it's sometimes if things you don't experience yourself or you have a different mindset, then it's hard to relate to people who experience it. And I think that would apply, um, maybe to people who look at what you're doing and actually find it hard to understand your mindset and the way you approach it and the way you think about it. But I guess that's the beauty of the world, right? We're all different and unique, which makes the world so interesting. Because if everyone was the same, then probably people wouldn't listen to your podcast, right? They'd be like, "Hey, he
Right.
sounds like me." Yeah,
Yeah, there is some of that. I think my audience pretty similar to me, like A type driven and so forth. But yeah, it's
yeah.
interesting. I'm looking at you and I'm like, yeah, in another world, right? Because me, I think I took myself from like a zero to a one. I think my metamorphosis trend started like in my 19, where I went from like drunk loser to successful entrepreneur and so forth, and nomad and athlete and so forth. But in
Mm.
another world, I mean, I might call you my weed doctor. Like some patients, they go see you and they're like, "Oh, Waseem's gonna give me my dosage today, and he's gonna make me feel good." Do you feel that you're having more of an impact right now with dispensing quote unquote weed than being a conventional doctor? Do you believe that like what you're doing is medicine on a higher scale?
I do believe that, yeah, and I say that because it's a lot harder to put yourself out there than it is to stick in with the crowd. And I'm sure, it sounds like you've had that experience yourself firsthand. It's much easier to be with the rest and go with the flow than it is to put your head out and stand up for something and have a positive message and stand up and go about doing it. So it's definitely harder, and I think we are making more of an impact. Not saying that the other areas of medicine are not impactful and meaningful; they are, but at the same time, there's such a need out there. Like we differentiate ourselves from just random use of cannabis because it's all prescribed, it's all doctors, it's all going through that kind of model. But it's all these people who want someone who understands to speak to. Even if you are a quote unquote stoner, that person, we can't blame them in terms of or punish them for it. Someone needs to step up and actually help them get out of it, offer them a hand. They might want to reduce their usage and they need a hand to kind of just help pull them out and be that figure who is understanding and support them in their journey. That's what we're here to do. I think that's what healthcare should be all about, is just to support and empower people to make those changes, because that's better than ending up like addicted for the whole of your life, or being in a hole for the whole rest of your life. So yeah, I think I'm very proud of what we're doing, and our approach is, like I said right at the start, is to look at the whole healthcare experience and really revolutionize how people experience healthcare. And medicinal cannabis is what we're using at the moment, but it extends beyond that in terms of how we even approach that experience around cannabis. and yeah, it's awesome to have that privilege and ability to come back in, because I think if I wasn't doing this and I wasn't having that kind of an impact, I'd probably be outside of healthcare doing something else, that I found that I would find more meaningful.
Fascinating. Well, thanks for coming today, Wasim. Where can people find out more about you?
Now, thanks for having me. Our website is cannabisclinic.co.nz. So people can log onto the website, read more about us and what we do, and contact us through there. We're only covering, our coverage currently is only in New Zealand. So for your international listeners that'll be just out of interest and can have a look, we're doing some amazing things. So we are looking at expanding what we do within the wider organization to internationally. And yeah, so you can look us up. We've also got a supplement brand called Florix, Florx .co.nz, and we are wanting to launch that internationally as well. And we've got a series of other business um, sidelines that we're working on at the moment that we're going to be launching in New Zealand and hopefully launching online as well. So keep an eye out.